Hey folks, how's it going? This is Iron Seagull here, back with another My Sims 4 wishlist video. So this time, I'm focusing on neighborhood stories, which we started getting last year, and then we got another update shortly after my wedding stories. So I think while it is an interesting feature, has a lot of room for improvement still. So I'm going to talk all about that here. Before I get into the new types of neighborhood stories that I would like to see, there's also a couple of other aspects of neighborhood stories that I think can be better. We do have the social interactions with other Sims, so you can try and push them in a certain direction, such as asking them to pursue their dream job. But why are they still stuck under the friendly menu? They should just have their own social pie menu called neighborhood stories, and then just have all those interactions tucked under there, because the friendly section's already so crowded. They really could just do an overhaul of organizing these social interactions across the base game and various packs, but that's slightly off topic. But yeah, definitely neighborhood stories, they should get reorganized into their own section. Also, I almost forgot to mention, they should update neighborhood stories so that there are more interesting ways to check on them, because, I mean, I don't mind the mailbox option with the instant notification, but there should be more realistic immersive ways to do that. Like, what if we could have Sims just check their phones or their computers, and it could be like they're on social media or there's a gossip website that reports on them. I know in The Sims 3 you could also use the gossip interaction to find out about recent happenings if you have story progression turned on, so that would also be great to have in The Sims 4, and if you use that interaction, you could only learn neighborhood stories that apply to Sims in the current world. Though, if you have Get Famous, if the celebrity is the one being gossiped about, then it doesn't matter what world you're in. Of course, as celebrities, their actions are heard more around the world rather than just like a random Sim in town who happened to cheat on someone or adopt a baby or whatever. There's definitely more to discuss with tying Get Famous into neighborhood stories, but don't worry, we'll get to that later in this video. I guess one last additional thing would be bringing back the newspaper, one other way to learn about neighborhood stories. Though honestly, I could take or leave newspapers. Like, that's a pretty, like, dated thing now. I can see why they're not in The Sims 4, so it's just like, I know other people really want newspapers badly, but they're not a huge deal to me, personally. However, if they did bring back the ability that we had in The Sims 2 to make a paper airplane out of the newspaper, then I'm all in. That's like just one of the funniest, most random interactions I've ever seen in The Sims, and I love that, so I always wonder how they came up with that one. The first neighborhood story type that I'm gonna suggest here is relationship progress, because it is kind of odd how Sims, they can like grow up on their own, they can have babies or adopt them, but they can't really get married on their own. So it's like if you have whole generations of Sims that are born from the neighborhood stories feature without any intervention, then they can just grow up and all die alone. So I think they should add that. Initially, I was just gonna suggest marriage, but then I realized they could go deeper with this, and maybe this is why it's not in neighborhood stories right now, because I think they will do more updates on this feature in the future. So it should be actual like relationship progress, not just suddenly, boom, the two Sims are married. Because then why not have it start out so that the Sims start having a romantic interest in each other, and then after a little while they start dating, and then after a while longer I don't need every single one of these to go positively. At any point they could end up breaking up as well, but they could end up getting engaged and then eventually married. Of course, traits would also factor into how these romance neighborhood stories play out. So especially if one or both of the Sims are non-committal or jealous, then that does greatly increase the chances of breakups or divorces happening. However, there is one other thing that should factor into this. I'm going ambitious here. this should also be introduced alongside an attraction system if it's not already in the game by the time Neighborhood Stories gets another update. This should have been brought back a long time ago, but hey, at least it's another reason for Maxis to do it. Because even if Sims are not having the non-committal or jealous traits, if there isn't much attraction between the two Sims, then they could still end up deciding to break it off anyways. There definitely needs to be a balance though. I don't want it to be to the point where it's nearly impossible for Sims who are non-committal or jealous or not very attracted to the other Sim to just not get with the other Sim. Like, sometimes it should still happen. Then it's more realistic and also less predictable on top of that, can really bring some interesting drama. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention, cheating should also be possible through Neighborhood Stories while we're on the topic of romance. So yeah, bringing even more drama into The Sims 4, so I think that could also be really fun. Wait a minute, friendships are not part of Neighborhood Stories either right now. I love how I thought of the whole romantic bit first and then friendships after. But yeah, it should be possible for Sims to form friendships on their own, maybe even become BFFs, and that could also segue into romance, but not all the time. Then of course it can go the opposite way, where Sims could become enemies while you're not watching them. It's just like, wait, what? What the heck happened? So, especially there as well, you could have some really funny text to go along with that would illustrate the circumstances behind them, like, disliking each other or full-on becoming enemies. Like, think the death notifications through Neighborhood Stories, such as the Sim tried to make a cereal and it caught fire somehow, or the Sim took a cake from a cow plant and they died, or they stuck their hand into an electrical outlet and they died, and that sort of thing. Perhaps with Sims becoming enemies, you could have a mixture of really petty ones, such as a Sim thought that another Sim was trying to kill them by feeding them pufferfish, but they survived and now they're enemies, dun dun dun. Or it could be something more dire, like Sim A took Sim B rock climbing and they were kind of just dragged along. Sim B didn't want to go, but they did anyways, and they almost died rock climbing and they failed to make it to the top of Mount Komorebi, so now they're mad at each other and maybe even have appropriate sentiments for that. I guess technically those are both pack-related ones, but I guess to throw a base game one in there would be if a Sim went to another Sim's house and almost got ate by a cow plant. So kind of like with the pufferfish one, they think the host had some ulterior motive, but they maybe or maybe did not. So yeah, I think there's a lot of funny potential there. Finally, moving on to a different aspect of base game Neighborhood Story progression I think they can add is skill progression, because I think that could also depend on what traits a Sim has. So if they are active or a bro, then they could end up gaining a fitness skill point or two after going to the gym. Or say, if we were including expansion packs, if you have the adventurous trait from Snowy Escape, then there is a chance that they could gain some rock climbing or skiing or snowboarding skills. Or for another example, if your Sim has the high maintenance trait, then there is a chance they could gain some wellness skill while you're gone. However, one aspect of this that I'm torn about is how many skill points should Sims be able to gain when you're not playing as them. Personally, I'd be fine if they could gain up to 2 or 3, but I mean, there's a lot of players who want different things, so while I don't think Sims should be able to max out skills without your supervision, because I think that could be cheaty, some of you might want it, so I really don't know. One more aspect of Neighborhood Stories that I think would be interesting to add onto with the base game features is careers, because you can influence a Sim to join a career, they can retire or leave a career, but nothing about promotion, so I think that should also be possible. But in a similar way to skill progression, I'm not sure how far Sims should be allowed to go up the ladder without your intervention. Should they be able to completely max out their careers, or just a couple of steps up the ladder? I wonder if there could be a slider or something like that to just kind of adjust how much progression you want your Sims to make with these two things. So you could have a moderate setting so that Sims could gain a couple of career levels or skill points. But then if you put it to the maximum setting, then yeah, they could actually max out their career or certain skills without your intervention. That's everything I can think of for the base game. But if you have certain packs, you should be able to have more options. There already is the possibility of cat or dog adoption if you own cats and dogs, which is great, but there's definitely a lot more that they can do. The first thing I want to talk about, though, ties into multiple packs. So what if you learned that Bella Goth became a vampire? Or Penny Pizzazz became a mermaid, or Bob Pancakes became a spellcaster. I definitely want to give occult players some attention here, including myself, so I think that would be pretty neat. However, I know there are many players who hate occult, so this particular thing should be disabled by default. Moving on to specific packs, let's talk about Get Together. So I think clubs could be an interesting thing to tie into neighborhood stories. Perhaps new clubs could form on their own, and they could even account for specific club rules from packs that you happen to own in addition to Get Together. And new Sims could join the clubs if they happen to line up with their requirements. And on a rare occasion, I think a new leader should be able to take over the club, because there is that feature where if you become good enough friends with the club leader, then yeah, you can actually just seize control of the club from them. On the flip side, it should be possible for Sims to leave clubs or even disband the club entirely. This could end up with a lot of dynamic change, especially if you play multiple generations, so the same clubs won't stick around forever, but there could be new clubs to replace them. Next I have Get Famous, so Sims should be able to rise and fall from stardom without your intervention, but the same thing should also happen with the reputation system, and both should also have funny flavor text, so it's like, it kind of just explains like how the Sims got famous, or how they ended up getting a good or a bad reputation. Then we have Discover University, so Sims should be able to, well, discover university all on their own. So Sims should be able to apply to university on their own, especially if they have just grown up into a young adult. They could also end up getting expelled from university, depending on their traits, and also they should be able to join the university clubs on their own. There's also a major opportunity here to fix what may be my biggest issue with Discover University, otherwise I would play with it way more. And it's that Sims progress through their current university semester when you're not playing as them. Because some people do like that, but personally I don't. I want to actually be there to guide my Sim through it, especially since it doesn't guarantee your Sims a good grade. I think they only get a B if you just like leave them alone for a while and then you come back and then it instantly gives you the notification that they've reached the end of their semester. With Eco Lifestyle, I'm not even sure if this would be possible to pull off, but what if neighborhoods could progress to different eco footprints depending on the Sims traits living in that neighborhood? So if there's many green fiends living near each other, then maybe their neighborhood could end up becoming green over time. And if your Sims have certain traits such as evil or materialistic, it could become more industrial instead. I have one thing for Snowy Escape because that was the expansion pack that added lifestyles to the game, so Sims should be able to gain or lose them on their own. I think Sims may be able to gain lifestyles already, but I may be wrong about that. But either way, with Neighborhood Stories, you can have certain households opt in and out of that progression. So that's it for expansion pack ideas, but I did come up with one more thing at the last minute. What if there were just some random funny stories that you could hear through the feature? They don't affect anything specifically, but just to add a little bit more humor. For example, you can have things like, oh, did you hear Eliza pancake sweat herself at work? Or did you hear that summer holiday donated to charity? That's so sweet of her. I was just thinking about how in Henford-on-Bagley and Tartosa, you have those interactions where you can hear about local gossip, but it's very specific to those worlds, so I think it'd be also really interesting if we had some more general ones across the whole game, for the base game. I guess that doesn't even necessarily have to be considered part of Neighborhood Stories, it could just be its own separate thing with its own name, but just thought I'd throw that out there anyways. And that wraps up this episode of My Sims 4 Wishlist. This ended up being way longer than I originally planned, but that just goes to show there really are a lot of things they could add to Neighborhood Stories. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. What's on your wish list for Neighborhood Stories? And if you'd like, check out my playlist of My Sims 4 Wishlist, because I've done a ton of episodes just like this one over the years. Interestingly enough, some of these things have come true. So yeah, it's kind of nice actually. I hope even more of those things come true in the future. But anyways, be sure to subscribe if you'd like to keep up with my latest gaming content, including life simulations and more. So I will talk to you all later, and have a great day. Thanks for watching!